This is America's heartland. It has vast, fertile lands where much of the country's food is grown. These lands have been the backbone of the U.S. economy. But what if I told you that an invisible line played a significant role in shaping this area? This line has influenced everything from city development to agricultural expansion. When you look at a map of the United States, something stands out. A clear divide between the dense populated east and the sprawling, more open spaces of the west. This split isn't just a coincidence, it exists due to the 100th meridian. This boundary remains a defining feature of America's history, economy, and even its cultural development. It's the line that, for generations, made farming in the east possible while challenging human settlement in the arid west. So how did this invisible boundary build America, and, more importantly, how did it break it? The 100th meridian is an imaginary line of longitude located at 100 degrees west of the prime meridian, running from North Dakota to Texas. But what makes it important? This isn't just a random measurement, it marks a dramatic shift in climate and landscape across the United States. To understand why, let's quickly explain what a meridian is. In geography, meridians are imaginary vertical lines running from the North Pole to the South Pole, measuring longitude. The prime meridian, at 0 degrees longitude, runs through Greenwich, England, serving as the world's starting point for measuring east and west. The 100th meridian sits exactly 100 degrees west of that, but unlike most meridians, it has a powerful effect on the land itself. This invisible line divides two drastically different environments. East of the line, rainfall exceeds 20 inches per year, supporting traditional farming in densely populated cities. West of the line, rainfall drops below 20 inches, leading to drier, more arid conditions where farming becomes far more difficult. This stark divide dictated where settlements could thrive, where railroads were built, and where economies shifted towards survival industries like ranching, mining, and oil drilling. Let's break it down by geography. Farmers in eastern states like Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois could grow everything from corn to soybeans and wheat, making these regions the agricultural powerhouses of America. Cities like Dallas, Omaha, and Oklahoma City grew rapidly as industries sprang up to support agriculture. Eastern lands, rich with crops, supported not only large-scale agriculture, but also a thriving economy that would serve as the foundation for the nation. With the growth of industrial centers in the east, these cities became vital for trade and manufacturing. Whether in the form of grain elevators in Kansas or steel mills in Chicago, the eastern U.S. was on a trajectory of expansion and innovation driven by its agricultural success. But head west and everything changes. The land becomes drier, farms become smaller, and ranching takes over. Instead of cornfields, you'll find cattle roaming in open plains. Mining and oil extraction also flourished as the lack of rainfall pushed economies to focus on extracting resources rather than growing crops. Major cities become more sparse as people adapt to the harsher conditions, creating a region more about natural resources than traditional farming. In the West, cattle ranching and oil rigs become symbolic of the economic shift that had to occur to survive. Vast deserts, mountains, and plains turned into a resource-rich land, where you dug for oil and minerals instead of growing corn and wheat. With fewer cities, life was about working with what little the land provided. Farmers and ranchers had to find innovative ways to make the land work for them, whether raising cattle, drilling for oil, or mining. Now let's look at how this line actually helped build America. The 100th meridian didn't just divide landscapes. It built the foundation of America's agriculture, economy, and infrastructure. It shaped where farms could thrive, where cities would rise, and where industries would take hold. Without it, the country's development might have looked very different. East of the line, steady rainfall and fertile soil made large-scale farming not only possible, but inevitable. Iowa, Illinois, and Missouri flourished as agricultural powerhouses, producing the corn, wheat, and soybeans that would feed the nation. But it wasn't just about the farms. The wealth generated by this agricultural boom rippled outward. Grain mills, meatpacking plants, and shipping networks expanded, creating an economic chain reaction. But farming wasn't the only thing shaped by this invisible boundary. Cities also merged along the line, becoming hubs of transportation and industry. Dallas, Oklahoma City, and Wichita grew into major centers not because they were chosen at random, but because they sat at the last stretch of viable farmland before the land turned harsh and dry. It wasn't just people and crops that followed this invisible line. So did infrastructure. The railroads that fueled America's westward expansion followed the 100th meridian, because it marked the last point where large-scale settlement was sustainable. The Texas and Pacific Railway extended westward, but stalled in areas where dry land made agricultural and economic development unfeasible. The Union Pacific, Missouri, Kansas, Texas, MKT, and Santa Fe railroads all built major rail corridors along or near the 100th meridian, ensuring they served the growing trade hubs of the East while avoiding the challenges of the drier, less populated West. Even the interstate highway system mirrored this pattern. Interstate 35, one of the nation's most important north-south highways, follows the Natural Divide, running from Laredo, Texas through Oklahoma City, Kansas City, and Des Moines, all cities that owe their growth to the economic corridor created by the 100th meridian. Further west, Interstate 25 and Interstate 27 cut through areas that required significant water infrastructure to sustain long-term settlement, reinforcing how this invisible line dictated feasibility of expansion. But transportation wasn't the only challenge. Water shaped the fate of settlements along the 100th meridian as much as agriculture or infrastructure. Since natural rainfall west of the line wasn't enough to sustain large-scale farming, settlers and governments built massive dams, reservoirs, and irrigation systems to push development beyond the natural boundary. Projects like the Ogallala Aquifer, one of the largest underground water reserves in the world, became essential to keeping Western farms alive. Over time, an extensive network of pipelines and water diversion projects was constructed to sustain cities and agriculture, but at enormous cost. Though invisible on a map, the 100th meridian shaped the placement of cities, the routes of transportation, and the very economy of the nation. But while it helped build America's agricultural heartland and its most important trade centers, this invisible boundary also helped break America, at least for a while. The U.S. government, eager to expand westward, passed the Homestead Act of 1862, offering settlers 160 acres of free land if they agreed to farm it. Thousands of families moved past the 100th meridian, believing they could replicate the success of farmers to the east. But the land was not the same. Rainfall was scarce, the soil was dry, and without irrigation, crops withered. Many settlers faced crop failures, livestock losses, and economic ruin. Some fought to survive, but for many, there was no choice but to abandon their land, leaving behind ghost towns and failed homesteads. The struggle didn't end there. By the early 20th century, farmers, determined to make the land productive, plowed deeper into the dry soil, clearing native grasses that had anchored the land for centuries. For a time, it worked. Crops grew, towns expanded, and it seemed as if the invisible boundary of the meridian had been conquered. Then the droughts came. In the 1930s, the Great Plains turned to dust. The soil, overworked and stripped of its protective grass cover, became loose and brittle. When the rain stopped, the dry, exposed earth was left vulnerable. Winds swept across the region, carrying away entire fields. Massive dust storms buried farms, homes, and entire towns. Between 1930 and 1940, more than 3.5 million people fled the plains, many heading west in search of work. The Dust Bowl reinforced the hard truth. The 100th meridian wasn't just a line on the map. The influence of the 100th meridian is still felt today. It continues to shape modern geopolitics and economic planning. Large-scale agriculture remains strong east of the line, while the western land has shifted towards energy extraction, oil, gas, and wind power. This divide has created distinct economic regions, with farming being a dominant force in the east and energy and resource extraction in the west. The 100th meridian is also a barrier to urban expansion. Most of America's major cities like New York, Chicago, and Atlanta are east of the line. West of the meridian, cities are fewer and farther between, and development is slower. But things are changing. Recent climate studies suggest the 100th meridian is gradually shifting eastward, with areas once reliably wet now experiencing drier conditions. Since 1979, the effective 100th meridian has moved approximately 140 miles east, now closer to the 98th meridian. The reason? Rising temperatures and shifts in wind patterns. The climate divide that once dictated where America could grow is moving, and if it keeps moving, the effects could be profound. More and more farmland is being converted to irrigated land. Between 2022 and 2017, over 1 million acres in the upper Mississippi River Basin had to rely on artificial irrigation, a 43% increase in just 15 years. And the shift isn't slowing down. Climate projections indicate that by the end of the 21st century, the arid-humid divide could shift another 2 to 3 degrees of longitude eastward. For over 200 years, the 100th meridian has shaped where America could grow, where cities could thrive, and where industries could survive. It built a heartland, set the limits of expansion, and served as a constant reminder that geography dictates opportunity. But now, it's moving. As the boundary shifts eastward, so do the challenges that once defined the West. Water shortages, unpredictable farming, and the need for adaptation. The question is no longer where the divide is, it's where it's going. So, what do you think? If the 100th meridian keeps moving, how will America change? And where would you rather live? East or west of the 100th meridian? Let us know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for the next one.